and welcome
Thank you.
everyone to our topic for today. As Maria mentioned, this is part 2 of IRC for engineers, and we're going to spend time today dealing with foundation and framing limits. If you were able to join us on Tuesday, we talked about the scope and limitations of the IRC. We're going to spend this 4-part series in the 2021 International Residential Code, or IRC as it's well known. I won't read the description, but just mention that last sentence there, which is that we're going to look at foundation, framing, sheathing, and cladding limits, and look at chapters 4 through 9 today. And as we did, or as we talked about on Tuesday, we'll be primarily focusing on wood construction, since over 90% of all residential structures are wood construction. That's where we decided to focus our attention. David will spend a good bit of time today, and then David and Sandra next week will spend the entire time talking about foundation issues. So that'll go beyond wood construction, obviously, but in terms of the framing above the foundation, we're going to focus in on wood. And as we just talked about with the description, foundation, framing, sheathing, and cladding limits. As we discussed on Tuesday, one of the main goals of our series is to identify the prescriptive and engineered solutions, and give you a sense as an engineer where the prescriptive solutions end in the IRC and where engineering will be required, where you would pick that up. So this is the course outline for that 4-part series. Next Thursday, I think, right at the same time, David and Sandra will be back for footing and foundation issues. And then the end of the month, I believe October 29th, if I'm not mistaken, David and I will come back and do some wind examples, focusing in more exclusively on the wind provisions of the residential code. And then as we mentioned on Tuesday, in November, Kelly Cobean will be here with you to talk about the IRC and the seismic provisions of the IRC. So we won't spend much time at all dealing with the seismic provisions, since you'll get full 2 sessions of that coming up in November. So Maria did our introduction, so I won't reiterate any of that, other than to say with your handouts you'll have our contact information. That's me on the left, and I'll give David a chance to introduce himself here in just a second, if he has anything else to add. I do know that he spends a good bit of his time in residential structures and has a lot of insight into this topic and where the prescriptive provisions run out and the engineering begins. And so he'll have some good insight to share with you today. So here's our course outline for today, and David will pick up here with foundations, floors, and walls, and then after the break I'll jump in with wall coverings and roof ceilings and assemblies. So that's the plan. David, if I left anything out, I'll turn it over to you and let you pick up from here through the first half of the program.
Excellent. Well, thank you, buddy. And yeah, so I am David Sparks, and I do spend quite a bit, probably over 90% of my time just working with residential and specifically with wood, and trying to kind of, one of our mantras as a company, just as a little bit of background, is trying to stay with the IRC as a first option as long as we can until we don't conform. That's why this topic is so interesting to me. And then you have to do an engineered design at that point. So with that, we'll go ahead and start with foundations. So as many of you probably already know, the two most common things we run into would be concrete foundation of some kind, as well as some masonry or CMU foundations of some kind. I know where I grew up, kind of central part of Arizona, there were a lot of crawl space, masonry crawl space walls. In the market that I currently work in Colorado, there's a lot of concrete crawl space walls as well as basement walls. So those are kind of the two primary things, but the code doesn't stop there. So you could have precast walls, you could have wood foundations, and then obviously they'll give you options for other alternates. Typically those will be engineered because you're going to have to go back to the IBC for code reports or something like that. So today we're going to focus in primarily on the concrete side of it, but just know that the IRC does have those other methods listed.